You gonna learn today.
1, 2, 3, let's go.
Are you ready?
This ain't the radio.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
The Street Report Podcast.
He reps for the DMV to the fullest.
Hosted by Easy.
Mr. President.
It is great to talk to you.
Raw and uncut.
Holla at your boys, it's Jay-Z.
DJ Khaled.
What up, though? It's your boy, Big Snoop, D-O-double-G. Rocking out with my nephew, Easy Street.
Easy Street.
The Street Report Podcast. Hosted by Easy.
Make sure you subscribe to The Street Report wherever you listen to podcasts. Whether it be on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher. Please hit that button and subscribe. I'll be dropping a brand new podcast every week. You might want to turn on your notifications. Also follow at Easy Street on Twitter and Instagram. The official website for The Street Report is easystreetshow.com.
How you doing? I'm Easy Street. We are in the office of that gentleman right there, Councilman Robert White, City Hall. On my right is Michelle Blackwell.
Hello, Easy.
How are you?
How are you? I thought you were going down. My bad. I'm sorry.
Okay. And of course, on the other side of the council member is Sharece Crawford.
Hello, everyone.
ANC from Southeast, Southeast.
You know it.
And of course, on the far right, our very special guest, Yaddiya.
Thanks for having me, Easy.
We know we gotta clap for this man.
Right, man.
We gotta clap for this brother right
Clap
here.
for us. We gotta clap for we have to clap for us.
Absolutely.
Clap for us.
So what brings us here today is, an incredible story that's happening in our city in regards to what that young man on the far right has done with this whole MOECHELLA, this whole Don't Mute DC. In case you're just watching this, you don't know what's going on. We had some issues with, some individuals that are not from DC that came to our city. And they had some complaints about the music, and there were a couple of concerts that gentleman had at the corner of 14th and U at the Reef Center. That his last one called MOECHELLA had how many people were there?
I say 4,000 and some change.
4,000.
I would say over 4,000.
So I would like to know this as somebody that's in the media that has worked in different radio stations, TV stations. How were you able to get 4,000 people in one place at one time with no radio advertising, no TV advertising at all? How did you do it?
Well, like I say, what I like to say first and foremost is I've always heard not to burn bridges, and I feel like this is a prime example of why you shouldn't, because the fact that I've built bridges with so many different type of people, it gave me the ability to be able to bring them together for that event, to produce it first and foremost. And as far as getting it to the people, it's just having the knowledge of an area and know who has what sort of following to get them involved so that we could create something for all of us, that all of the audience, every audience can come to, not just one. Don't alienate anyone. This is for the community. So I use that strategy when I'm promoting, and the power of social media is unmatched. So between those two things.
No radio commercials. He had 4,000 people. It was bananas. Yeah. Councilmember, you were there that night for MOECHELLA. What do you remember?
I wasn't gonna miss it. I'm a DC
photos,
guy.
I saw the video.
So when I see the photos, I would have been destroyed if I hadn't been there. But I'm so impressed by, so proud of this brother and what he's doing. And I was gonna make sure that I was there supporting the work that he's doing, but also the movement of Don't Mute DC, and also. I'm like BYB for life, so if Big G is there and it's free, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
Now, I was out of town on the West Coast at a funeral. I missed it. I saw the videos, and I was amazed. And one of the very first things that came to my mind was this, Councilman. I saw the energy.
Yeah.
I was like, what if we could mobilize our people to deal with issues like voting, affordable housing, jobs, education as well, to address some of the issues that are going on in our community, because it's very obvious we have some problems, and we're gonna talk about that in just a little bit. But I want to circle back. Michelle, you of course have been associated, been part of the go-go community for a long time. What do you think about what this young man and the rest of the younger generation of go-go has been able to do?
It reminded me of a time where go-go's, the sound of the city was something that you heard throughout the city on a more normal basis, like in the late 80s, early 90s. Marion Barry had the Showmobile. During the summer, especially, summer youth programs, a lot of the jobs were as musicians. A lot of the bands played as a job. My first job was summer youth employment job, and actually it was a performing arts job. So it just reminded me of growing up and seeing and of how the city used to be, where you could hear our music. It was a normal occurrence, whether it was at recreation centers, Georgia Avenue Day, Emory Heights Day, all of those sort of events. And so it was a moment of nostalgia for me, and it was a great one. So
Powerful.
So your thoughts on it? What you saw?
I was there, Easy, and I got a chance to bump right into the council member and Yaddiya. That was actually my very first time meeting him at that moment. And I said, I have to figure out who the person is that did this. And we had a really great conversation. And then I had a moment where G looked back, Big G, Anwar Glover. Shout out to my brother, Anwar Glover. He looked back and he saw me on the stage and he said, I remember the days when we were doing activism work on city council before there was ever social media. And that inspired me. I had to post it on social media because I said, wow, to think that now it's a lot of excitement around activism on social media. But then it was just understanding the need to show up and be present, and the need to push policy, the need to influence policy. And I was so grateful at that time to have served in the trenches with Anwar Glover and so many others who have been on the front lines for a very long time. And so that moment reminded me of what that time was like. And then now with social media, imagine how we can get back to really enforcing policies, influencing policy, influencing change. And so getting out the vote, and we had some people out there actually helping to register people to vote. I'm a member of the state committee, and so we've been doing that all over the city. And I think that from this moment, I talked to Yaddiya after, and I said, we need some policy. I'm hoping to come out of this conversation with a specific agenda that we can move forward with and mobilize that amount of people around, like redefining affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. So, Yaddiya, this is not your first go around with being politically active. I remember when there was something going on with the ordinance to stop musicians that were playing out in front of Capital One. Talk about that.
All right, so basically, the Amplified Noise Amendment was a piece of legislation that they were proposing last summer, and the first rally that we did, I like to call them peaceful demonstrations, was against that. Because like I said, I feel like that's kind of how go-go music was created, through people playing outside, bands like Junkyard, so on and so forth. I felt like that was would be the start of a slippery slope of eliminating the culture. So we spoke out against that last year, and I think that it went really well. And like I say, this year has grown to be even bigger, which I definitely appreciate, and it shows that we have momentum and that people support and agree with what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. Now, Councilman White, we sat in this office and we talked about that ordinance when it came down. Your thoughts?
That's right. So I think some of this has to do, and it's interesting because it really converges with Don't Mute DC. I think a lot of even council members aren't native to DC, and so culturally didn't understand what a bill to essentially get rid of people performing in that area outside. I don't think they fully understood what impact that would have on people and what impact it would have on the culture of DC. And so part of my job as a council member and somebody who grew up here is to bring that voice. And there are other native Washingtonians on the council, Trayon White, Kenya McDuffie. But it's our job to make sure people understand the full impact of the legislation that gets imposed. Because sometimes people aren't malicious, but you still end up hurting people. Sometimes people are malicious and they just don't care. And so my job is to defend both.
Councilman White.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and just unpack all of this. You have some questions you want to ask.
I do have some questions. So there are things that I can do that Sharece can't do. There are things that Sharece can do that I can't do. Same with Michelle and Yaddiya and you, obviously. And so, for me, it's always interesting when I see the work that other people do. And I think about the first performance demonstration that Yaddiya did with Don't Mute DC, the second one, and the third one. And each time I'm wondering to myself, like, why did this brother think that this could work? And then the third time, I'm thinking to myself, is he worried that the third one is going to be the one that like breaks the camel's back or somehow interrupts the movement and the moment instead of progressing it forward? And so I don't know how I would have dealt with that fear. And so I wonder, like what made you believe, one, you could get people out the first time, and then what made you believe the third time that was a good idea?
That was a great question, like, because that was definitely something that I was going back and forth with, especially after doing it the first 2 times. The first time I was like, I know it's going to go well. It did exceed my expectations, though, I felt like it made a great impact. So I'm like, I feel like it's almost disrespectful if we're saying that this is a community forum to do it one time, because what can change after one instance? Nothing. We have to do it again. So once we did it the second time, I saw the impact, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. A movement is actually starting, though it was intended to be political from the start. Right. So the third one, when Backyard finally confirmed and agreed to perform, I was like, man, this is going to be crazy. And then I was like, we should make it as big as possible. And then I started to think, man, what about safety of the people? Even though this is a symbol of peace and unity, you still have to take certain precautions to protect people, be mature about it. So I was going back and forth like, should I do it? Should I do it? And I said, man, we just got to go all out for the city. Like, who am I really doing this for? The people. What would they want? I think that they will want this, and I think that this will be the tipping point. And now I think that they all brought us here, and that was, what it was intended for, period. It was intended to open the door and start these conversations with all these different people from different walks of life, different professions. Even to have me here right now is a great honor to be amongst you all. Absolutely. And especially, where I'm coming from and who I am. Like I said, to be here, even it means a lot. And it's because what? We use go-go music as a tool of communication and as the glue to the city. So, I definitely was skeptical, though I work off feeling and my intuition. I just felt like it was right. Definitely a little nervous, but I felt as though we had to.
I think it was important that that you spoke on the commitment that you had, even with the concerns that you had, and I want to thank you for that, because I'm sure you all know, as other fellow DC natives, that we've had other events that were really great for the community that we don't have anymore. That's because of other
Unifest.
Exactly, Unifest,
Georgia Avenue Day.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is, and as a member of the go-go community, the frustrating thing for me has been that I feel like we've been the go-go culture has been just as much a victim of violence and the problems that have gone on all over the community. But the only difference is that whenever it happens at a place where a go-go band is playing, we are then blamed for it. Whereas if it happens at a high school, if it happens at a grocery store, if it happens at a gas station or inside of someone's neighborhood, no one would think to say, well, it's because of the neighborhood, it's because of the school, it's because of the gas station. But we've been in survival mode as a culture for so long that it's almost like we feel like our hands are tied and we can't do a whole lot of different events like the one that you did, because we're afraid that it will be tied to and associated with the culture and the music. When again, go-go has been just as much a victim of, those sort of incidents like Unifest, which no one could have predicted that some woman that was, half crazed out of her mind
and on drugs would run over a bunch of people. Any more so than you could predict, that someone, it only takes 1 or 2 bad apples to ruin an event like Georgia Avenue Day. So, again, when you were going through the process of should I and shouldn't I just want to thank you on behalf of the go-go community for siding with the culture and taking a chance, because again, that is why I think that we've been so alienated, and also a reason why I think we haven't progressed as much, because we've been in survival mode.
So, like, when I look at what's happening with Don't Mute DC and all the involvement, so here just on this panel alone, we have Michelle, who's a performer. We have Sharece, who is an elected official in DC. And one issue that you've raised with me before, Easy, is you always have to make sure that the women are at the table. And when I think about movements in the past, when I think about the civil rights movement, when I think about voting rights, a lot of times the faces are men for historic reasons, but the energy and frankly the planning is not. And so my question to Michelle and Sharece is, what's the role of women in this movement at this point and going forward?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked that question because, as Easy pointed out earlier, we had a panel discussion at Union Temple Baptist Church on the same sort of issues about music and our community and the roles that we are defining for one another and trying to solve the issues that come up. And I was the only woman. No, I was one of two women on the panel. There were about eight men. But I do notice when it comes to a lot of the community meetings that I've attended. In fact, I was at one that you were at Checkers Enterprises 2 weeks ago. Yeah. The majority of the people there were women. And so, it's just, and far as, and even in go-go, I would say women represent about 15% of bands as a whole, but we do represent a lot of management roles. Yeah. So I just think it's something that is something that I suppose we do well with, as far as being able to organize well and do all the multitasking and stuff. And I think as a mother raising a son, I think it's something that I'm able to sort of. I'm trying to find the right words. I guess I would say that the reason why we're important is because it's sort of the same reason why men and women have different roles in the household. Just as important as her role is there, it's important for a woman's point of view and her know-how and her sort of intrinsic, like, sort of. I'm trying to find a word. I'm sorry. Her instincts are crucial to the household. Is crucial to the community and these movements too.
And I'm going to pick that up to say one word: edify women. Those two words for men. Let's say you and Yaddiya decide to edify women behind the movement. It is going to bring significant attention to the work that women do behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And what I do not see enough of, and this is outside of this table, because that's one of the things that I always want to thank my brother Easy for, is always making sure women have a seat at the table. That's been your role for as long as I've known you. And I said to you when you called me, I said, I want to thank you because men bringing women to the table, and not just bringing them to the table, but solidifying their seat. Because what will happen is women will get bullied even amongst male leadership. Yes. Yeah. Women will get, their contributions will be downplayed significantly even amongst male leadership. And so there's an ego that's associated with male leadership, and that at this table, I appreciate that. But it's to say that I don't want them to take my shine. I don't want this woman to take my shine. And that is something that is a cultural reality and that I think we need to address, that I think we need to call to the front in order for women to get their just due, because women have been behind the movement for far too long. And so I would just recommend that even after this conversation, regardless of Women's History Month or Mother's Day, to take time to consistently edify the women that are working behind the scenes, edify the women that are on the front lines. There's so many women on the front lines that fail to get acknowledged because we're overlooked, like you said, because the men are the more dominant voices, because the men are posting 10 times more on social media because the women are busy doing a lot of the work, okay? And that's not to knock the front line and the work that they're doing, because it's all necessary. Yeah. But it's to say that we're not advertising ourselves to say, let me show you everything that I've done in my day, because we couldn't even captivate the full day. Well, let me show you all the work I've done behind the scenes on Don't Mute DC, because I'm still working on the next project. I'm already 10 projects ahead to talk about this one particular instance, because I'm moving forward.
And on that point, if I could just say, so I would have been at the first Don't Mute DC concert without my communications director, Rita Lewis, but I wouldn't have met Yaddiya. And I would have just been a dude in the crowd. Maybe somebody would have known I was there, maybe not. And so, you gotta recognize that work.
I want to say this too. The energy that women bring is necessary, to succeed, because we have to figure out how to make it harmonious and work together. Like, working together is paramount, and like I say, a woman's energy is necessary, as ours is as well. So, like I said, you all bring different things to the table, but we need to complete the meal, and that's not possible without you all. So I agree, we do have to.
Can't have the go-go without no ladies.
I can't have
the go-go without no ladies, bro.
I would dare say that the past 20 years, women. If you all know that in the first two decades of go-go, there was very little female presence.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of male sort of energy, that sort of tribal energy. Yeah. And there was no balance. But if you notice, since mid to late 90s up until now, there's a female presence in every band. And I think that our energy has made the movement a lot more, the culture a lot more balanced.
Yeah, it's more diverse.
And peaceful. I'm not sure if people recognize. Oh, yeah.
I recognize.
Hold up. And sexy too.
That too. Because I love where you're going with this. Because while we, enjoying the go-go with you, we not... getting into beef with another dude. So let's keep it 100.
We just dropping the Unabomber back in the day.
Absolutely. If you would have had Backyard in the early 90s, there wouldn't have been a woman on the front line.
Right.
And then you have Sweet Thing Tiffany on the front line, singing a song that she remixed the Adele song that is kind of a city anthem.
And brought all of these new people into go-go who didn't listen to go-go before.
It really did. But that was such an important question, Robert, and I want to thank you for that, because I appreciate you acknowledging and noticing that.
Well, I gotta give a hat to Be Easy. He brought up earlier.
Even like as far as like Blackwell, like she can lead the band. I listen to like shows where you leading the band. So even that, like even not just a woman being in the band, but a woman to lead, like be the lead talker of a set, that's major. And it's like I said, I'm about symbolism. So imagine like other girls, they feel inspired. I've seen girl bands, other than Belladonna, it's another girl band that came up like in my era, PMS, so it's definitely, out there as well, and women can do it, like I say, just as good as we can. So
I want to ask a question of everyone on the panel, and we're going to start with Yaddiya, okay? How do we bring the same energy that we saw at MOECHELLA to issues like voting, affordable housing, jobs, education, and also gentrification in our city?
We create the same excitement by blending it all together. Like we blend it, it's ingredients. So the music is one of them, though the messaging is another one. I think if we present certain messages during these rallies, when we present certain messaging during these rallies consistently, even subconsciously, it will sink in. People will start to feel like, even now, people feel the movement and they're interested and they are talking. They are starting to figure out what they can do. That's the first step. That's the first step to mobilization, like you're saying. So whatever issue it is we want to tackle, we can do that. It's so many different issues that people, have show interest in. What might interest one person won't interest the other one. So it's enough people to tackle each thing. We break off in the group. That's what government is anyway. So like I say, we just present the messaging in layman terms in ways that they like we're doing through the music, through the shirts, through the posters, through the, all of these small things. I like to use the pop culture with the political messaging, and I know that people will take heed because we're giving them these important messages using something that they love.
I definitely want to echo everything that Yaddiya said, and to add to that is the uses of social media and calls to action. Change.org is an incredible platform to create petitions One of the petitions that I'm going to be tapping on Yaddiya to support is to redefine the term affordable housing, because a lot of the people that were at the rallies, unfortunately, have been pushed out of the city. They are natives that can't afford to live here because of affordable taking over, masking the reality of the cost of living in the city. So to answer your question, creating petitions online, circulating them through the same type of mass networks, and getting people to sign those petitions, identifying specialized areas, petitioning specifically for X, petitioning specifically for Y, petitioning specifically for Z. And that way, for those that are interested in signing off on affordable housing. And you know what's so interesting about the petitions is that you don't even have to really necessarily be interested in these areas to support and sign a petition. But simply because we're talking about this as a way to impact the culture overall, people are going to be more inclined to do so. And so another petition is looking at education reform and implementing musical and go-go education in our school systems. So that way when people are coming in and growing up through the ranks, it's not just an event. It's learning that there are different careers in music, different opportunities in music, the historical reference of music. And so change.org is what I would say is going to be a way that we can transition this mass movement into mass policy.
So for me, this hits at the heart of the issue for me. So I work in government. I'm a council member. I ran for office because I believe with my heart, I know to my soul that government can make change. And so I'm a fifth generation Washingtonian. In the past 20, 25 years, almost my entire family has been priced out of the city. Because I'm a lawyer, but I'm the only college graduate in my family. So the situation is not, my family has not been able to stay in this city. And when I talk to folks, when I talk to black folks in this city about why I don't see them in City Hall, about why they're not calling council members, about why they're not running for office, what they tell me is that, government is crooked, government is corrupt, and government isn't paying any attention to them. And I know why that is. It's because black folks in the city have been taking it on their chin for a long time. And so when Don't Mute DC happened, what happened kind of organically is that folks saw that if they showed up, they could win a fight. And so for me, it was so symbolic. This message from little old DC reached the CEO of T-Mobile, wherever he lives, and they won that fight. And so my message as a lawmaker, and Sharece and I do this work, is look, what we did here, we can do in other places. Because government is going to make change. It's just a question of whether or not it's going to make change for you. And so the folks that come out to an event that Yaddiya does, folks that come out to see Michelle perform, are folks that they're not on my email list. They're not coming to some event that I put together. But when we start to combine forces and work together and share platforms and really start to push this to the next level, I think the level of change we can make locally is incredible and unprecedented. And that's why for me, I'm so eager to see us keep moving this forward, but also make sure we make a policy shift. So it's not my place to say, hey, y'all, we should pay attention to education. We should pay attention to affordable housing. We should pay attention to social services. It's my place to say, look, what is your priority? Here is how you can mobilize it into actual change. And so what I want to try to do is be a cohesive entity in this. So what Yaddiya is doing, what I'm doing, what Ron Moten is doing, what Michelle's doing, what Sharece is doing, we need to make sure we're working together. And if we work together, I'm telling you, what we could do here is incredible.
I'm really glad that you brought up people's apprehension when it comes to policy making and government, because as an artist, I think it is crucial, and I'm glad that I'm here representing the go-go community, because I've kind of been known as the person on and off social media to be like the go-go activist. Like, I'm always at the community meetings because of my association. I've been really, really tight with Ron Moten for years. I've been at a lot of certain council hearings here in the city and in Prince George's County. But I noticed, during my interaction with people on social media during the 2008 and 2016 elections, that people are very, very jaded. They're very, and in particular, they don't feel that and it's ironic because I was telling people during the 2016 election that no matter what happens, we really need to be more concentrated on our local government and policies and voting in our local elections and concentrating on what's going on here than necessarily, even though it's kind of weird because we are in Washington, but other than what's going on down
a
the
block
street.
that way.
Exactly, because we have more of an ability to impact that. And as an artist, I think because we are so influential in our community that we have to be a voice. And I know that it's that we aren't necessarily well versed, all of us, on policy making, on government, but just to put it out there, because I've heard a lot of people be very irresponsible as artists and as influencers on social media to say, well, it doesn't matter if you voting doesn't matter. And I you can go up and down my social media pages and you will see examples of me giving examples, just like in Florida. How they just did I guess you might want to call it a poll tax on guys who are returning citizens.
Oh,
now that they have to pay
voter suppression is a whole
that they have to pay all of these different fines and fees
just to vote
and all that just to vote. And I'm like, look, if they've been trying to do their best to stop us to vote from the civil rights movement to now, then obviously it's important. So I'm glad you said that, because I think as an artist and anybody in the go-go community is listening, I can't be the only one. Like I need a lot of our go-go influencers to speak out about how important it is to be involved in the political process, how important voting is, and to show up and to try to mobilize people around policy, because it's just
Speaking of politics, and I want to ask you this, Councilman, what was it like after MOECHELLA down the hall? Were the other council members like, yeah, man, I got it.
I want to know that one too.
What were they saying? Please take us down the hall, man.
Honestly, so there's a couple of council members, the ones who were from here, they're like, yo, I see you at the go-go last night. And then we had like a 12-hour legislative meeting that started the next morning. But I think most of the council members are kind of quiet. Shout out to Brianne Nadeau, who represents Ward 1. She's white and she's not from D.C., but she and I stepped up at the same time with the original T-Mobile issue. And so there's some council members who get it, and there's some who don't. And like I said, I don't think my colleagues are malicious, but there's some issues, some cultural issues that they don't get. And this Don't Mute DC thing has really become inconvenient to the efforts to pull away from the performers performing around the, what's it called now? The Verizon Center, the Capital One Arena, MCI Center, whatever it's called now. The Don't Mute DC has become very inconvenient to that effort. Now, just like with the issue of the T-Mobile store, we got to be respectful of each other. Everything has a balance, and we have to have mutual respect. And so I think it was always a solvable issue, but government was going to come in and be heavy-handed. And I think they're going to have a hard time doing that now because of Don't Mute DC, because you got over 4,000 people coming out. That speaks to the fact that people are paying attention, and that this issue, just of performance, just of the culture of DC, is important.
Council member, I want to thank you for those comments, because you reminded me of when the Nationals had the Caps have their game right down at 7th Street, and they shut down about 4 blocks radius, and they celebrate all caps. I'm all for celebrating all caps, but I think that it's equally important to give that same energy and that same attention to Native culture. And I don't think that we have, as a collective, I've seen all council members down posting and celebrating, the Caps shut down the city and shut down the community, and that is convenient. And the word inconvenience is significant.
For every playoff game.
Every playoff game.
Shut off the street.
Every one of them. And I'm celebrating too. I'm going to...
all caps. When the Redskins won the Super Bowl. We did it like Georgetown. I know we went down to Georgetown to celebrate down Wisconsin Avenue. And I think Georgia Avenue had its moment, and of course the parade. But I don't remember us shutting down the city, even when the Redskins won the Super Bowl those couple times.
Let me say this.
Go ahead,
Yaddiya. And there's something I want to say in regards to that.
They
Go
had
ahead.
to shut down the street all 3 times. Can you imagine?
Inconvenience.
And not even just that. I look at U Street as being the heart of the city. If this was New York, I would say that's Midtown. So I feel like that area, everything about it is very unique. And then also U Street, there used to be a ton of black businesses on U Street. It's very, very rich with culture. Even look at all the murals and all of that. Last thing I want to say is, a lot of gentrifiers or people that are coming in town are sold on the culture. Look how many different countries around the world celebrate their culture and with festivities. We need to have that same place to where our culture is put on that pedestal, because culture is appreciated by everyone across the world. So it's like we need those same opportunities, because they're being pitched on certain areas being the Shaw area or this area or that area. They need to actually experience the culture, not just have a mural of this is the Columbia Heights area mural. No, it's deeper than that.
Don't just appropriate it.
Yeah. Exactly. And it also needs to be a partnership with the Mayor's Office of African American Affairs. The more I think about it, because the Latino caucus, they're handing out checks. And I talked to you about this, council member, for immigration to be neutralized, for immigrants in the city to be neutralized. Whereas we so often forget that some of those checks and fundings need to be for residents to be neutralized, right? And indoctrinated in their own city. And I think that those are things that's a partnership that I think is necessary to happen with the go-go community.
One thing that I thought was amazing and great was that this happened.
Yeah.
That you guys were allowed to set up your equipment. I mean, I don't know any other city that would allow that many people to come in and set up a band and have 4,000 in New York City. That would have never happened, bro. Yeah. I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think in Los Angeles that would have ever happened.
And then
you had the ATV bike. I don't think, and I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I really don't. Am I wrong?
I think we saw.
Am I wrong? I don't. I don't
see it in LA with Nipsey Hussle. I think I don't know if I got a count of how many people showed up and showed out during that episode, but that was a time in Compton where I think that we saw a similar effect.
But our DC, I give MPD a hard time when they deserve a hard time.
Yeah.
But I got to give them a shout out when they do a good
That's
job.
what I was going to say.
MPD did a really good job.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, not even just the police, but also like D-Dot and the people that help clean up. It's through and through. We got to see it through and through.
When I saw the ATVs, when Iron showed me the ATVs riding down U Street, I was like, oh my God.
No, I know.
Like, what the hell going on?
Even for Iron to be there,
then I saw the tweet from Shamari Stone, because he reported it from on Channel 4. I was like, and they were like, the police was like, nah, we ain't arresting nobody.
Yeah.
That was a smart thing to do. It would have changed the entire thing. It would have been better.
So funny to me. It seemed like deserted. The area is such a pulse in that area. People everywhere. Any other time during these rallies, it's like deserted. It's like, where's everyone at? It's us.
And I'm telling you,
this is ours.
It was bone chilling. I gotta say, my bones are chilled right now.
We were
talking about it.
Can we even say that we'll ever see that again? ATVs riding down U Street.
But we need to. That's another part of policy that we push for.
I don't know if we'll ever see that again.
Do you remember when they were trying to ban ATVs and fine them? And I know, Councilmember, you remember because you were working on this. And when ATVs, when they were make it illegal in the city, and basically we pushed back to say there needs to be a time frame at minimum or road closure for bikes to be able to ride in the city, because that is also a part of the culture. So every time we have to consistently push back on these issues and make it normalize it, make it a part of reality. Set time frames, set locations, get the permits, make it a reality.
It's for everyone. Okay. Like I say, this area is for everyone. There should be something in place for everyone to be able to display what they believe in.
We have dog parks
or time, whatever it is. We need to be able to do these things. It's important.
You're gonna keep it real.
They're just not on the campus of Howard University. Now, before we wrap up, closing words about the conversation that we had is very obvious, and I want to thank every one of you for your input, because the messaging has to be there. The social media piece has to be there. The change.org and us connecting and producing partnerships, the policy's got to be there. And I think that, all these things are going to be needed when we talk about how we're able to use GoGo as a platform to be able to deal with the voting issue, to deal with the affordable housing, the jobs and the education, and also gentrification. Before we go, final words about today's discussion. Let's start with Yaddiya on the end.
Man, I think that this is a great start. And I think that all of these people here are definitely very impactful people, and I appreciate you all for allowing me to all be here. And I'm looking forward to where we can go from here. I think that first things first, before there is anything set in place, we got to make a plan. It has to be a strategy. So first we have to sit at the table, which we're doing right now, and I appreciate it, and I'm excited to see what will come of this from conversations with me and Mr. White, you and other people involved in the community, people that wouldn't maybe normally cross paths. So I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I want to tie in the conversation that Yaddiya and I were able to have offline about utilizing platforms like change.org. I'm grateful that you mentioned public safety. I see also opportunities in careers and implementing these conversations into, I have students that are protesting to ensure that classical music can maintain in the school systems, that they're trying to cut budget and funding for that. And I think that making the case of the many levels of careers that are in entertainment and music and go-go, especially creating a partnership with the amount of money that we put into our own budget here at Entertain DC, creating a partnership. And I went and met with them and talked about what does it look like with partnering with our school systems, so that for those who are not going off into college can transition into one of our well-funded DC agencies. I think that is a huge opportunity that we haven't yet capitalized on, that I think is necessary, bringing the culture to the classroom, transitioning the classroom to the workforce, and also looking at public safety. I mean, you guys have hit on so many jobs around what was created on for a musical platform that I think we need to explore a lot more and break those opportunities down so that we can show a matriculation from the classroom to the workforce, and not just in the traditional sense, but in the creative sense, in the cultural sense, and also how to really look at how that's going to change public safety, how that kind of openness and embraciveness changes the way people look at themselves, that they're not a failure because I can't read and write in this aspect, or I'm not good at this, but I'm good at something else over here. That is really going to reduce I sincerely believe that would change the way a child will look at someone else and want to murder them. To say, now I have something that I'm good at, whereas before that was suppressed. So if we unsuppress a lot of the areas that creativity grows in, we can change public safety, we can reform our education, and we can redefine policy as it stands in the city.
I just remind people, to me, what I think is so important. Elected officials make changes and make policy, but people who are elected as much by the people who show up as they are by the people who don't show up. And so we need to continue to encourage people to show up, to get involved, to vote. And, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but, now more than I think ever in the history of our city, go-go artists have a platform and reach people that folks in this building can't reach. And so I encourage our performers and our activists to do the work that Michelle is doing, and go beyond the stage and get involved and encourage people to get involved in what you can do if our performers do that, if our go-go community does that, will really help change the trajectory for our city.
Yeah.
I want to just sort of parrot something that all three have said. I'm sorry about that. I think it is essential what she brought up, and it hits home for me because I've been a full-time performing artist since 2003 is when my mom kind of gave me a call and said, look, you're doing this full-time job and you're raising your son and you're playing 4 and 5 nights a week, like something has to give. And I went on, stepped out on faith, and I've been performing full-time ever since. And there have been times, in this business where the money is good, the money's not so good, and there's really no way to translate 15 to 20 years of experience managing and performing in a band in a sort of real world job atmosphere. And so when you bring up, when you brought up the subject about implementing performing arts programs or re-implementing them, because that's when I was growing up, they were a lot more prevalent. Into the school system, I can think of a lot of people who I know personally who aren't necessarily making or doing as financially well or as busy as some of the bigger bands, but who could offer a lot in terms of educational opportunities for children to learn about music, and also what you said about creativity and how much it helps for children to be able to express themselves. We know that in the inner cities all over the world, all over the country, our children are going through like a form of PTSD.
Yeah.
And the way for a lot of us to sort of have our cathartic moment is to create and to sort of let it out in the way whether it's rapping, whether it's singing, performing, drawing, whatever. And I just think that would be an excellent opportunity on both ends. One, for the kids to be able to feel open, to be able to express themselves and to learn how to translate that into real life financial opportunities. And also for people who are in the go-go community like myself, who want to maybe enter the workforce at certain periods of their lives and don't really, know how to, translate their years of performing arts to real world situations. And also what you spoke about, I just encourage again all go-go artists to be involved in the political process and encourage other people to vote, to engage with their local representatives. And also I want to thank you again, like for your courage,
Definitely.
I feel like there's been a renaissance going on with go-go culture over the past few years, but what you did sort of like
revamped
to sort of apex.
significantly.
So I'm just excited about the potential of what it is that we will be able to the things that we'll be able to accomplish from here moving forward, and looking forward to working with everybody.
And I just want to say, this was truly an honor, Easy, to be here, to have this conversation.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this.
And I think lastly, with the power that this council member have, and I don't have a lot of faith. I'm in politics, and I have very, very short patience and short tolerance in political figures. And Robert White is just, I could not think of a better person today to be sitting in their office to have this meeting with. I text him, call him all the time, like you are the beacon of hope,
diamond in the rough, so to speak.
But I say that to say, in all sincerity, at the highest level of utmost respect for you and your office and the work that you do. And I think that the hearings that we have throughout the day, I think that you will be the person to start pioneering hearings and meetings in the evenings, speaking directly to issues where the working class is at work, and not the lobbying class filling up the Wilson building to push their agendas. And I think that is the last thing that I will say, with all of my gratitude and appreciation and all of the wonders that will go on from here. I'm just grateful to be in the number.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you. Yaddiya, thank you. Sharece, thank you. Council member, thank you. Also, thank you to Michelle Blackwell as well. And we want to thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Street Report. If you want to be a part of the change, show up, show out. Man. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Street Report podcast. I am Easy Street. You can follow me at Easy Street on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. My official website is easystreetshow.com. Want to remind you, the Street Report podcast is being brought to you by SIA Multimedia, specializing in producing podcasts just like this. We create social media strategies for companies, and we also produce video ads for social media for all you business owners out there. Our website is SIAMultimedia.com. That's CYA multimedia.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SIA Multimedia. Making sure all eyes are on you. Keep that third eye open. One love. Peace. And thanks for rolling with the brother.